The first time the rescue dog scratched the wall at exactly 2:14 in the morning, nobody paid attention. The second time, people blamed the wind. By the fifth night, the owner of the motel was sleeping with a flashlight beside his bed. And by the 12th night, nobody inside the Prairie Lantern Motel was laughing about it anymore. Because the dog wasn't scratching randomly, he wasn't barking, he wasn't pacing, he wasn't reacting to noises outside. Every night at exactly 2:14 a.m., he would wake from a dead sleep, walk to the same section of the same wall in room 7, and scratch until his paws bled. Then he would stop exactly 5 minutes later, as if some invisible timer had expired. Nobody could explain it, especially not the man who owned the dog. His name was Wade Mercer, and at 48 years old, Wade had spent most of his life believing there was a reasonable explanation for everything. For 22 years, he had worked as a county road maintenance supervisor outside Valentine, Nebraska, the kind of job that taught a person how things actually worked. Roads cracked because winters were brutal. Trucks broke down because machines wore out. People left because people changed. Nothing mysterious, nothing magical, just causes and consequences. At least that was what Wade had always believed. Until he adopted a rescue dog named Boone, and Boone started scratching at a motel wall every night at exactly 2:14 a.m. The Prairie Lantern Motel sat along a lonely stretch of Highway 20, about 20 miles west of Valentine. Most travelers never noticed it. The faded sign flickered more often than it worked. Half the rooms were empty year-round. The place survived mostly because truck drivers occasionally needed a bed and because hunters passed through every autumn. Wade never intended to live there, but life had a way of rearranging plans. 3 years earlier, his wife Cheryl had packed her belongings into a rented trailer and moved to Lincoln. Their daughter had already left for college. The house became too quiet. Then the house became too expensive. Eventually, Wade sold it. He rented room 7 at the Prairie Lantern while deciding what came next. At first, he told himself it was temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month. That had been 14 months ago. Now, the motel room contained everything he owned. A coffee maker, a television that only received 3 channels, a closet full of work clothes, and Boone. Boone entered Wade's life 6 months after the divorce. The dog had arrived at the Cherry County Rescue Center under unusual circumstances. Nobody knew exactly where he came from. A rancher had found him wandering near a cattle fence almost 30 miles from the nearest town. No collar, no microchip, no missing dog reports, nothing. The shelter estimated he was about 4 years old, maybe 5, a mixed breed, part shepherd, part cattle dog, part something else. He carried scars across his shoulders. Old scars, not recent injuries. Evidence of a difficult life. Yet despite everything, Boone was remarkably calm, quiet, observant. The type of dog that watched people before deciding whether they could be trusted. Wade understood that feeling. The shelter manager noticed Boone following Wade with his eyes. "He likes you," she said. The dog immediately looked away. Wade laughed. "Doesn't seem like it. Trust me." The shelter manager smiled. "He does." 3 days later, Boone moved into room 7. The adjustment was surprisingly easy. Neither of them demanded much from life. They shared silence comfortably. Morning walks across the prairie. Evenings watching thunderstorms roll across distant grasslands. For the first time since his divorce, Wade felt something close to peace. Then the scratching started. Night 1 happened in late October. Wade woke to a sharp scraping noise. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He rolled over and checked the clock. 2:14 a.m. Boone stood beside the west wall. His front paws dragged across faded wallpaper. Nothing aggressive, just persistent. As though he wanted to get someone's attention. "Knock it off," Wade groaned. The dog immediately stopped. Problem solved, or so he thought. The next night it happened again. Same wall, same time, 2:14 a.m. The night after that, again, exactly 2:14. No variation. Not 2:13, not 2:15, always 2:14. That detail bothered Wade more than he wanted to admit. Dogs didn't understand clocks. At least they weren't supposed to. Yet Boone somehow knew. Every night, without fail. Within 2 weeks, the behavior had become impossible to ignore. The motel owner, a broad-shouldered widow named Donna Fensky, finally confronted Wade while he drank coffee in the office. "Your dog keeping you awake?" Wade looked up. "How'd you know?" Donna sighed. "Because he's keeping everybody awake." That got Wade's attention. "What do you mean?" "Guests in room 6 and 8 complained." She folded her arms. "Said they hear scratching every night." Wade felt embarrassed. "I'll handle it." "Not blaming the dog." Donna hesitated. "Just saying it's strange." "Strange how?" Donna glanced toward the hallway. "The guest said it sounds like he's trying to dig through the wall." That night, Wade decided to stay awake. If Boone wanted to scratch, Wade intended to see exactly what triggered it. At midnight, the dog slept peacefully. At 1 o'clock, nothing happened. At 2 o'clock, still asleep, Wade began feeling ridiculous. Then the clock changed from 2:13 to 2:14. Boone's eyes opened instantly, not gradually. Instantly, the dog rose from his blanket, walked directly to the wall, and started scratching. The transformation unsettled Wade. There was no hesitation, no confusion, no searching. Boone knew exactly where he was going. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Wade grabbed a flashlight. The wall appeared completely ordinary. Wallpaper, drywall, wood framing. Nothing unusual, no insects, no rodents, no sounds, no smells. Nothing. Yet Boone continued. His focus never wavered. 5 minutes later, he stopped, returned to his blanket, and went back to sleep. Just like that, as if nothing had happened. Wade barely slept the rest of the night. The following afternoon, he removed a framed landscape picture hanging near the spot. Behind it was plain wallpaper, nothing else. He tapped the wall, solid. He listened, silence. The mystery should have ended there. Instead, it became stranger. 3 nights later, a traveling electrician named Gary Lewis checked into room 8. At breakfast, he approached Wade. "That your dog?" Wade sighed. "Depends what he did." "The scratching." Gary stirred sugar into his coffee. "Been hearing it every night." "Sorry." Gary shrugged. "No big deal." Then he paused. "You ever open that wall?" Wade laughed. "What?" "The wall." Gary looked serious. "I stayed in room 7 years ago." Wade frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" The electrician seemed uncertain. "Maybe nothing." "Then why ask?" Gary leaned back. "I remember hearing sounds in that wall." The room suddenly felt smaller. "What kind of sounds?" "Hard to describe." "Try." Gary considered. "Like somebody tapping." Wade stared. "You serious?" "Probably mice." "But..." Gary shrugged again. The timing was weird. A chill moved through Wade. "When?" The electrician looked confused. "Years ago." "No, what time?" Gary frowned. Then his expression changed slowly, like someone remembering something they hadn't thought about in a long time. "Actually," he stopped speaking. "What?" "Never mind." "No, what?" Gary set down his coffee. "It happened around 2 in the morning." Wade felt his stomach tighten. "Every night?" The electrician nodded. "Far as I remember." Neither man spoke for several seconds. Finally, Gary laughed nervously. "Probably coincidence." But Wade no longer believed in coincidence. That evening, he visited the county library. Valentine wasn't large. The library occupied a modest brick building near Main Street. Most residents visited for internet access or community events. Wade came looking for something specific: history. The Prairie Lantern Motel had existed since the 1960s. Maybe older records would explain something. An elderly librarian helped him locate archived newspapers. Hours passed, nothing. Then he found an article from 1998. The headline wasn't dramatic, just a small local story. A brief mention buried near the bottom of the page. A truck driver had suffered a medical emergency while staying at the Prairie Lantern. Paramedics responded shortly after 2 in the morning. The driver survived. Nothing remarkable. Except for one detail, the room number. Room 7. Wade copied the article. On the drive back to the motel, he felt foolish. One medical emergency over 20 years ago meant nothing. Thousands of people had stayed in that room. Random events happened, yet something kept bothering him. The timing. Everything seemed connected to timing. 2:14. always 2:14. When he returned, Donna sat behind the office counter. Find whatever you were looking for? Wade hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. How long have you owned this place? Since 2003. Anything unusual ever happen in room 7? Donna's expression changed, just slightly, but Wade noticed. What kind of unusual? There it is. What? That face. Donna sighed. You already know something. Wade leaned forward. Know what? She remained silent for several seconds, and she finally spoke. About 15 years ago, a family stayed there for almost 2 months. Wade waited. A father, a mother, little boy. And? Donna stared toward the hallway leading to the guest rooms. They left suddenly. Why? I don't know. That's it? Donna shook her head. No. The pause stretched, long enough for Wade to feel his pulse rising. The little boy had a dog. Wade blinked. What kind of dog? A shepherd mix. His heartbeat quickened. Like Boone? Similar. Donna looked uncomfortable. One night the dog wouldn't stop scratching at the wall. Wade felt every muscle in his body tense. What happened? Donna swallowed. I honestly don't know. Donna, I swear. She looked genuinely unsettled. The family checked out the next morning. Without explanation? Without explanation. Wade stared at her. And for the first time since the scratching began, a realization formed in his mind. Maybe Boone wasn't reacting to something currently inside the wall. Maybe he was reacting to something that had happened there years ago. Something forgotten, something nobody had connected, something tied to a family that vanished overnight. That possibility should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, it felt like the first clue that actually mattered, because later that night, when the clock reached 2:14, and Boone walked toward the wall once again, Wade noticed something he had never seen before. The dog wasn't looking at the wall. He was looking slightly lower, toward the baseboard, toward a section near the floor, a section hidden behind an old wooden dresser that hadn't been moved in years. And when Boone started scratching this time, he wasn't scratching randomly. He was scratching one precise spot, the same spot, again and again and again, until a tiny strip of ancient wallpaper finally peeled away, revealing something underneath. Not drywall, not insulation, not wood, something else. Something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. And the moment Wade saw it, he realized the mystery was far bigger than anyone had imagined. Wade dropped to one knee before the dresser. Boone stood beside him, breathing hard. The dog's nails had torn through the wallpaper, just enough to expose a narrow strip of metal, not a pipe, not wiring. A flat piece of steel embedded behind the wall. For a moment, Wade simply stared. The Prairie Lantern Motel was old, but not old enough for hidden steel plates inside guest room walls. He pulled the dresser away. Dust exploded across the floor. The furniture clearly hadn't been moved in years. A rectangular outline appeared beneath the remaining wallpaper, about 12 inches wide, maybe 18 inches tall, perfectly shaped, deliberately concealed. Wade's pulse quickened. Donna! His voice echoed through the hallway. A few minutes later, Donna arrived carrying a flashlight. She looked from Wade to Boone and then to the damaged wall. What happened? Wade pointed. Her eyes widened. What in the world? Together, they peeled away more wallpaper. The hidden object gradually emerged. A small steel access panel, painted decades ago, then covered, then forgotten. Donna looked genuinely shocked. I've owned this place 23 years. You never knew? No. She shook her head immediately. I swear, the panel had no handle, only a tiny keyhole. Wade examined it closely. Old, very old, likely original construction. Do you have keys? Donna laughed nervously. For that? No. Neither of them slept much that night. The next morning, Wade borrowed tools from the county maintenance garage. Within an hour, the panel finally opened. Behind it sat a narrow compartment between wall studs, not much larger than a mailbox. Empty, at least at first glance. Donna frowned. That's it? Wade shined his flashlight deeper. Something rested at the very back, a small object covered in dust. He reached inside. Carefully, his fingers closed around leather. When he pulled it out, both of them stared. It was a child's notebook, weathered, aged, blue cover. The corners were worn almost white. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Donna whispered, How long has that been in there? The answer became obvious when Wade opened the first page. The date was written in pencil. June 14th, 2011. 15 years ago. almost exactly when the family Donna had mentioned stayed in room 7. Wade slowly turned pages. At first it looked like an ordinary journal. The handwriting belonged to a child. Large letters, misspelled words. Simple observations. We drove all day. Dad got another job. Mom says Nebraska is pretty. Ranger chased rabbits today. Wade paused. Ranger? Donna looked over his shoulder. The dog's name, page after page, described life through the eyes of a boy. Wade dropped to one knee before the dresser. Boone stood beside him, breathing hard. The dog's nails had torn through the wallpaper, just enough to expose a narrow strip of metal, not a pipe, not wiring. A flat piece of steel embedded behind the wall. For a moment, Wade simply stared. The Prairie Lantern Motel was old, but not old enough for hidden steel plates inside guest room walls. He pulled the dresser away. Dust exploded across the floor. The furniture clearly hadn't been moved in years. A rectangular outline appeared beneath the remaining wallpaper, about 12 inches wide, maybe 18 inches tall, perfectly shaped. Deliberately concealed. Wade's pulse quickened. "Donna!" His voice echoed through the hallway. A few minutes later, Donna arrived carrying a flashlight. She looked from Wade to Boone and then to the damaged wall. "What happened?" Wade pointed. Her eyes widened. "What in the world?" Together, they peeled away more wallpaper. The hidden object gradually emerged. A small steel access panel, painted decades ago, then covered, then forgotten. Donna looked genuinely shocked. "I've owned this place 23 years. You never knew?" "No." She shook her head immediately. "I swear." The panel had no handle, only a tiny keyhole. Wade examined it closely. Old, very old. Likely original construction. "Do you have keys?" Donna laughed nervously. "For that? No." Neither of them slept much that night. The next morning, Wade borrowed tools from the county maintenance garage. Within an hour, the panel finally opened. Behind it sat a narrow compartment between wall studs, not much larger than a mailbox. Empty, at least at first glance. Donna frowned. "That's it?" Wade shined his flashlight deeper. Something rested at the very back, a small object covered in dust. He reached inside. Carefully, his fingers closed around leather. When he pulled it out, both of them stared. It was a child's notebook, weathered, aged, blue cover. The corners were worn almost white. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Donna whispered, "How long has that been in there?" The answer became obvious when Wade opened the first page. The date was written in pencil. June 14th, 2011. 15 years ago. Almost exactly when the family Donna had mentioned stayed in room 7. Wade slowly turned pages. At first it looked like an ordinary journal. The handwriting belonged to a child. Large letters, misspelled words. Simple observations. We drove all day. Dad got another job. Mom says Nebraska is pretty. Ranger chased rabbits today. Wade paused. "Ranger?" Donna looked over his shoulder. The dog's name, page after page, described life through the eyes of a boy. Nothing unusual. Long highway trips, cheap motels, new towns, a dog named Ranger. Then the entries changed. Not dramatically. Gradually, the boy began mentioning arguments, whispers, late-night conversations between his parents, sentences that felt heavier. Mom cried again. "Dad says we can't stay. Dad says they found him. Mom says nobody found him. I don't know what that means." Wade continued reading. The entries grew increasingly tense. Then he reached one written just days before the family disappeared. "I woke up because Ranger scratched the wall. Dad got really scared." Mom said not again. Dad looked inside the wall. "He took something out. He told me never talk about it." "Never." Wade felt his chest tighten. Donna stared at the page. Neither knew what to say, because suddenly the mystery wasn't just Boone. Years earlier, another dog had scratched the exact same wall, the exact same place, and whatever that earlier dog found had terrified the boy's father. The final journal entry was dated July 3rd, 2011. Only 3 sentences. "Ranger scratched again tonight. Dad says we leave tomorrow. Mom says maybe it's finally over." That was the last page. Nothing else. No explanation. No names beyond first names. No answers. Just more questions. For the rest of the day, Wade couldn't stop thinking about the journal, especially one detail. Dad says not again. Not again. The phrase suggested prior incidents. Multiple incidents, something recurring, something connected to the wall, or whatever had once been hidden inside it. That evening, Wade drove back to the library. This time he searched property records, construction permits, ownership histories, anything connected to the motel. Hours passed. Most records revealed nothing useful. The Prairie Lantern had changed hands several times. Owners came and went. Renovations happened occasionally. Then Wade found something unexpected. The motel originally had a different name. The Sandhills Traveler Lodge, built in 1967. The original owner was a man named Curtis Voss. Wade copied the file. Then another record caught his attention. A legal dispute from the late 1970s. Minor, easy to overlook. Curtis Voss had briefly shared ownership with a business partner, a man named Owen Keller. The partnership dissolved after a lawsuit. No details. Just names. Ordinarily, that wouldn't matter. Except another document mentioned something strange. Owen Keller disappeared in 1981. Not officially declared missing, just vanished from public records. No death certificate, no forwarding address. Nothing. Wade sat back. The timing felt wrong. Not because of the disappearance itself. Because of Boone. Because of Ranger. Because of the hidden compartment. Because somehow everything seemed connected to people leaving without explanation. The family, the business partner, the notebook, the scratching. One loose thread kept leading to another, and none of it explained why Boone cared. The next few nights became increasingly difficult. Boone's behavior intensified. The dog no longer scratched only for 5 minutes. Now he began whining beforehand, restless around midnight, anxious near 1:30, then fully alert as 2 o'clock approached. At exactly 2:14, he launched himself toward the wall, harder than ever. His nails gouged wood. His breathing became frantic. Whatever had drawn his attention wasn't fading, it was growing stronger. Wade began filming the behavior with his phone. He reviewed every recording, searching for patterns. One night he noticed something odd, not the dog, the sound. A faint noise buried beneath the scratching, almost impossible to hear. He replayed the clip repeatedly, volume maximum. Finally he heard it, a vibration. Low, mechanical, lasting only seconds. Wade sat upright. The noise wasn't inside the room. It was coming through the wall or beneath it. The next day he followed the motel's blueprint copies stored in Donna's office. The wall in room 7 backed onto a narrow maintenance corridor, an area used decades ago for plumbing access, mostly abandoned now. Nobody entered it anymore. The passage was accessible through a locked utility door behind the laundry room. Donna found the key. Together they opened it. Dust covered everything. The air smelled stale. Old pipes lined the walls. Electrical conduits. Insulation. Nothing unusual. Then Boone entered. The dog's reaction was immediate. His ears snapped forward. Every muscle in his body tightened. Without hesitation, he moved deeper into the corridor. Wade followed. 20 feet, 30. Then Boone stopped, directly behind room 7. The dog pressed his nose against a vertical pipe. Not the wall, the pipe. Wade examined it. Rusty. Original construction. Large enough to carry water. What is it? Donna asked. I don't know. Boone began sniffing furiously. Then he followed the pipe downward, toward the floor, toward a section disappearing into concrete. The dog sat, staring, waiting. Wade crouched beside him. Something about the pipe bothered him. A faint vibration traveled through the metal. Barely noticeable, yet definitely present. He checked his watch. 2:12 in the afternoon. Nothing significant, at least not until he remembered the recordings. The low vibration, the same sound. His mind raced. That night he returned to the corridor before bedtime. At 2:10 a.m. he stood beside the pipe. Flashlight off, silence all around him. Then the clock reached 2:14. Instantly the pipe vibrated, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to feel. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, then gone. Wade stared. The timing matched perfectly. At that exact moment, Boone started scratching inside room 7. The realization hit him immediately. The dog wasn't reacting to the wall itself. He was reacting to something moving through the pipe, or some signal traveling through it. A signal occurring every night. Exactly 2:14. The next morning, Wade contacted the local water authority. The answer surprised everyone. The pipe wasn't connected to motel plumbing anymore. It had been abandoned decades earlier, disconnected, unused, officially dead, which raised an obvious question. If the pipe was inactive, why was it vibrating? The mystery deepened 2 days later. An elderly man checked into the motel. Room 3. Nothing remarkable about that, except Boone's reaction. The moment the man entered the office, Boone froze, not aggressive, not fearful, focused. The same intense attention he showed toward the wall. The man's name was Leonard Pike, 78 years old. Retired railroad worker, traveling alone. That evening, Wade noticed Leonard studying the motel grounds from a bench outside, almost as though he recognized the place. Eventually, Wade sat beside him. Passing through, Leonard nodded, something like that. "You been here before?" The old man hesitated, then smiled faintly. Long time ago, Wade felt curiosity stir. "When?" "Early 80s. The answer hit like a hammer. Early 80s. The exact period connected to Owen Keller's disappearance. Wade tried to remain casual. "What brought you back?" Leonard looked toward the highway. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he said something that instantly sent a chill through Wade's body. "I've spent 45 years wondering whether I imagined something." Wade stared. "What kind of something?" Leonard's eyes drifted toward room 7. And when he finally spoke, his voice had become very quiet. "A sound." Wade's heartbeat accelerated. "A sound?" The old man nodded. "Every night." Silence. Then, at exactly 2:14 in the morning, Wade felt the blood drain from his face, because suddenly the mystery stretched back far beyond Boone. Far beyond Ranger. Far beyond the family that vanished. Whatever was happening at the Prairie Lantern. Motel had been happening for nearly half a century. And for the first time, someone had returned who might actually know why. For several seconds, Wade couldn't speak. The prairie wind moved through the dry grass beyond the parking lot. A pickup truck rolled down Highway 20 in the distance. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt normal anymore, because an elderly railroad worker had just independently mentioned the exact same time, 2:14 a.m. Not approximately, not around 2 in the morning. Exactly 2:14, the same time Boone scratched, the same time the pipe vibrated, the same time another dog had scratched that wall 15 years earlier, the same time a family abruptly disappeared. And now a man who hadn't stayed at the motel in decades was talking about it, as if he had been carrying the memory his entire life. Wade leaned forward. "What sound?" Leonard kept watching the highway. "At first I thought it was plumbing. Then I realized it wasn't." Wade waited. The old man rubbed his hands together, slowly, as though deciding how much he wanted to say. "I was working freight lines back then." "Railroad?" Leonard nodded. "Temporary assignment." His eyes drifted toward the motel sign. "I stayed here almost 3 weeks." "What happened?" "The second night I woke up." "At 2:14? "Exactly." A knot tightened in Wade's stomach. "What woke you?" Leonard frowned. The sound was strange. How strange. Like metal humming. Wade immediately thought of the pipe. "The vibration?" Leonard looked surprised. "You've heard it?" Wade didn't answer. That was answer enough. The old man stared for a moment, then continued. "I followed it." "Followed it where?" "Outside." The words caught Wade off guard. "Outside?" Leonard nodded. "The sound wasn't strongest inside the motel." "Then where?" The old man pointed toward the prairie beyond the parking lot, roughly a quarter mile away. Nothing stood there except grass. Wade followed his finger. "Out there?" "That's where it seemed loudest." A chill moved through him. "What did you find?" Leonard laughed softly. "Nothing." The answer felt disappointing, until the old man added, "At least not then." Wade's attention sharpened. "What do you mean?" Leonard looked uncomfortable. 3 nights later, I saw somebody. The wind seemed to stop. "Who?" "I don't know." "Man?" "Looked like one." Leonard paused, standing alone in the grass. Wade felt his pulse rising again. "At 2:14? "Every night." The words hung between them. "Every night. Not once, not twice. Every night." "What was he doing?" Leonard shook his head. "That's what bothered me." "Why?" "He wasn't moving." The old man's voice had become distant, like he was reliving something. "He'd just stand there, looking at the motel?" Leonard nodded. "Every night." "Did you tell anyone?" "I told the owner." "Then what?" The old man laughed bitterly. "He told me I needed more sleep." Wade couldn't blame him. The story sounded unbelievable, Yet every new piece somehow connected to everything else. Did you ever get close enough to identify him? Leonard's expression changed subtly, but enough. No, why not? The old man looked away. For a moment, Wade thought he wouldn't answer. Then Leonard finally spoke. Because one night he wasn't there. Wade waited. And that scared me more. Why? Leonard swallowed. Because the next morning I learned somebody had checked out unexpectedly. A cold feeling spread through Wade's chest. The family? Leonard blinked. What family? Now it was Wade's turn to stare. The dates didn't match. Leonard had stayed in the early 80s. The family arrived in 2011. Different people, different decades. Yet both stories ended with somebody suddenly leaving. What guest checked out? Wade asked. Leonard took a long breath. A businessman. Name? I don't remember. Did something happen to him? No idea. The old man shook his head. He left before sunrise. That alone shouldn't have mattered. People checked out early all the time. But Wade could no longer ignore the pattern. People came, something happened, then they left. Again and again. For decades. That night, Wade barely slept. At 2:10, he positioned himself inside the maintenance corridor. Flashlight ready. Phone recording. Boone remained inside room 7. The dog paced anxiously. 2:12, nothing. 2:13, silence. Then 2:14 arrived. The pipe vibrated, exactly as before. Low, mechanical, almost musical. The strange humming lasted perhaps 12 seconds, then ended. Immediately, Boone began scratching, harder than ever. Wade moved closer to the pipe, listening, studying. Then something happened that nearly made him drop the flashlight. The vibration wasn't traveling toward the motel. It was traveling away from it, toward the ground, toward whatever lay beneath the prairie. The realization followed instantly. The pipe wasn't creating the sound. It was carrying it like an antenna or a conductor. Something underground was producing the vibration, something that activated nightly at 2:14. The next morning, Wade decided to follow the pipe. Official maps showed it extending hundreds of yards beyond the motel property, originally part of an old utility line abandoned decades earlier. The route crossed open grassland before disappearing onto private ranch property. By noon, he stood beside the last visible section. Boone accompanied him. The dog seemed unusually alert, focused. The farther they followed the pipe route, the more attentive he became. After another quarter mile, they reached a fence line. Beyond it sat a small ranch house, weathered, aging, surrounded by empty pasture. A pickup truck occupied the driveway. An elderly woman emerged from the porch before Wade reached the gate. You lost? Her voice wasn't unfriendly, just cautious. Wade introduced himself, explained the motel, explained the old pipe. To his surprise, the woman immediately recognized what he meant. That line? She nodded toward the pasture. Been there forever. You know where it goes? The woman hesitated, then smiled oddly. Most folks don't ask about it. Wade's interest sharpened. Why not? Because nobody remembers. The answer felt important. What was it originally for? The woman looked toward the horizon. My father used to tell stories. What kind? He said the line connected to an emergency communication station. Wade frowned. A what? Back before cell phones, the woman shrugged. That's all I know. An emergency communication station. The phrase lingered in his mind. Not because it explained anything, because it explained almost nothing. What happened to it? Closed. When? She thought for a moment. Maybe early 80s? Wade froze. Early 80s. Again. Everything kept circling back to that decade. The same decade Leonard stayed at the motel. The same decade Owen Keller vanished. The same decade the communication station supposedly shut down. A pattern was emerging, but the shape remained frustratingly unclear. Then Boone did something unexpected. The dog suddenly pulled toward the pasture. Hard. His leash tightened instantly. Wade nearly lost his grip. Boone! The dog ignored him, eyes fixed on something beyond the rolling grass, something Wade couldn't see. The ranch woman watched carefully. What's gotten into him? I wish I knew. Boone continued pulling, determined, focused, almost desperate. The woman studied the dog for several seconds. Then her expression changed. You know, What? I've seen that before. Wade turned immediately. Seen what? A dog acting like that. His pulse quickened. When? The woman pointed toward the distant prairie. Years ago. How many years? 15 maybe. Wade's heartbeat accelerated. The same timeline as the family. The same timeline as Ranger. What happened? The woman looked thoughtful. A man and a little boy stopped here. Everything inside Wade seemed to freeze. A little boy? She nodded. They were looking for directions. Directions to where? The answer came quietly. An old building. Wade felt a chill. What building? The woman pointed farther west, beyond a ridge, almost hidden by distance. I told them there was nothing left. Nothing left of what? The woman looked at him carefully. The communication station. Silence. Absolute silence. Wade's mind raced. The family. The dog Ranger. The hidden notebook. The motel. And now a communication station buried somewhere beneath the prairie. Suddenly the pieces felt closer together than ever before. Not complete, but closer. That evening, Wade found historical aerial photographs online. Most revealed empty grassland. Then he located one from 1978. His breath caught immediately. There it was, a structure. Small, square, surrounded by fencing. Positioned exactly where the ranch woman indicated. Connected directly to the utility line, connected directly to the motel. The station had existed, which meant the question became unavoidable. What had happened there? The answer arrived sooner than expected, because later that night, Leonard knocked on the door of room 7. The old railroad worker looked pale, more unsettled than Wade had ever seen him. What happened? Wade asked. Leonard held out something folded, a newspaper clipping. Yellowed with age. Fragile. I found this in my truck. Wade unfolded it. The article was from 1981. A tiny local story. Easy to miss. Only a few paragraphs long. But one sentence immediately grabbed his attention. A maintenance technician assigned to the Sandhills emergency relay station had disappeared during a routine overnight inspection. No evidence of foul play. No suspects. No explanation. The missing technician's name was printed beneath the article. Wade read it once. Then again, his stomach tightened because he recognized the name instantly. Owen Keller, the former motel co-owner. The man who vanished from public records. The man connected to the lawsuit. The man whose disappearance sat at the center of everything. Wade slowly lowered the clipping. The room felt suddenly smaller. Much smaller, because for the first time, all the mystery's threads had connected to the same person. And if Owen Keller had disappeared while working at that communication station, then there was a very real chance the answer Boone had been searching for wasn't hidden inside the motel at all. It was waiting somewhere out in the Nebraska prairie, exactly where the old utility line ended. Exactly where a little boy and his dog had gone looking 15 years earlier. And exactly where Boone now seemed determined to lead them. Wade didn't sleep at all. The newspaper clipping remained on the small table beside his bed. Every time he looked at it, the same question returned. Why would Boone care? Not just why the dog scratched. Not just why he reacted to the vibration. Why him? The communication station had been abandoned for decades. Owen Keller disappeared 45 years ago. The family with Ranger vanished 15 years ago. Boone himself had only appeared 6 months earlier. Nothing connected. And yet somehow everything connected. The contradiction gnawed at him. By sunrise, he had made a decision. He was going to find the station. Not the location marked on old maps. The actual site. Whatever remained of it. And Boone was coming with him. Leonard insisted on joining. So did Donna. The three of them left shortly after 8. The Nebraska prairie stretched endlessly beneath a pale morning sky. Miles of grass rolled across the sand hills like frozen waves. The beauty of the landscape carried a certain loneliness. A feeling that anything abandoned could disappear forever. The old aerial photograph provided a rough guide. The utility line provided another, but it was Boone who led them. The dog pulled steadily west, not frantically, not randomly, purposefully, as though following a scent trail only he understood. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a shallow rise, and there it was, or at least what remained. The station wasn't a building anymore. It was a scar. Concrete foundations barely visible beneath weeds. Fragments of fencing. Rusted bolts protruding from cracked slabs. Most people would have walked right past it. But the moment Boone saw the sight, he froze, completely still. His ears lifted, his body stiffened, then he began moving, slowly, deliberately, around the perimeter, sniffing, searching. Wade watched closely. The dog ignored most of the ruins. Instead, he focused on one particular section near the western edge, a collapsed concrete structure partially hidden beneath grass. It looked like the entrance to something underground. Donna stared. I never knew this was here. Neither had Wade. The opening had been sealed long ago. Concrete chunks covered most of it, but enough remained exposed to reveal a narrow stairway descending beneath the earth. Leonard frowned. Well, what? The old man pointed downward. I think we found where the line ended. Wade approached cautiously. Cool air drifted from below. Not much, just enough to confirm there was still open space underneath. The station apparently contained a buried level, something maps never mentioned. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Donna asked the obvious question. You going down there? Wade looked at Boone. The dog was already standing beside the entrance, waiting. An hour later, they returned with proper equipment. Flashlights, ropes, dust masks. The stairs proved more stable than expected. Old concrete, weathered but intact. The underground chamber wasn't large, maybe 40 feet across. Half the ceiling had collapsed. Water stains covered everything. Ancient equipment sat rusting in darkness. Control panels, metal cabinets, communication hardware from another era. The place looked frozen in time, like someone had simply walked away. Boone immediately started searching, not excited, focused. The same focus he showed every night at 2:14. Wade followed him deeper. The beam from his flashlight swept across dusty walls. Old wiring, broken desks, nothing unusual. Then the dog stopped. A metal locker stood against the far wall. Unlike everything else, it wasn't rusted beyond recognition. It had remained sealed, protected, untouched. Boone sat directly in front of it, his tail motionless, his eyes fixed. Wade's pulse quickened. The locker door resisted at first, then finally opened with a shriek of metal. Inside sat a single box, cardboard, aged, yet surprisingly intact. No money, no weapons, no government secrets, just papers, hundreds of papers. Wade lifted the box carefully. The first document appeared ordinary. Maintenance reports, equipment logs, technical records, nothing mysterious. Then he found a folder, labeled simply Incident Reports. The atmosphere changed instantly. Leonard moved closer. Donna leaned over Wade's shoulder. Inside were dozens of handwritten reports, most dated between 1978 and 1981. Employees documenting unusual communication failures, equipment malfunctions, emergency transmissions that never reached their destinations. At first, the reports seemed boring, technical, routine. Then Wade noticed a recurring name, Owen Keller. Again, and again, and again. Apparently, Owen wasn't just a former motel co-owner. He had also managed the communication station. The realization surprised everyone. The motel partnership, the station, the disappearance. Everything overlapped. Wade continued reading. Gradually, a story emerged. Not criminal, not sinister, just tragic. The station served remote ranches across the region. Before modern technology, emergency calls depended on relay equipment. When storms knocked out lines, lives depended on those signals getting through. The work mattered a lot. Then problems began. Equipment failures, transmission delays, messages arriving too late. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough to worry Owen. The reports became increasingly frustrated. He documented every issue, every malfunction, every failed repair request, and every ignored warning. Months passed, nobody listened. Budget cuts followed. The station deteriorated. Then Wade found the final report, the last document Owen ever wrote. His hands tightened around the page. The report described a critical relay failure. An emergency signal from a remote ranch had been delayed. Not minutes, hours, long enough to matter. Very much. Attached to the report was a newspaper clipping, a winter storm, a medical emergency, a rancher who died waiting for help. The room fell silent. Wade looked up. Donna covered her mouth. Leonard stared at the floor, because suddenly the mystery felt human, painfully human. Not secrets, not conspiracies, regret. The report ended with a handwritten note. 3 sentences. I warned them. Nobody listened. Someone died because of it. The handwriting shook across the page. Raw, personal, almost desperate. Wade slowly turned to the next sheet, his breath caught. It wasn't a report. It was a letter, unfinished, addressed to no one, written by Owen. He began reading aloud. If anyone ever finds this, understand that I tried. I documented everything. Every failure, every delay, every ignored request. The system is unsafe. The room remained silent. Wade continued. They will close this station and blame equipment. They will blame weather. They will blame bad luck. But people knew. They knew long before someone died. His voice grew quieter. The rancher's family deserves better than silence. The letter stopped abruptly, half finished. No signature, nothing else. Just unfinished thoughts. And suddenly a new question emerged. If Owen wrote this, why hide it? Why place it underground? Why not send it? The answer appeared inside the next folder. A lawsuit. Not involving the motel. Not involving money. A wrongful death claim. The dead rancher's family had attempted legal action. The case failed. Insufficient evidence. Missing records. Lost documentation. Most of the station's files disappeared before court proceedings. Except they hadn't disappeared. Owen had hidden copies. Right here. Inside the station. Protected. Preserved. Waiting. Donna looked stunned. So that's it? Wade wasn't convinced. No. What do you mean? He held up the box. Something's missing. Leonard frowned. What? Wade looked around the room. The reason Boone cares, nobody argued. Because despite everything they had discovered, the central mystery remained unsolved. Why the scratching? Why 214? Why the wall? Why Boone? The answers still felt just out of reach. Then the dog stood up slowly, calmly, and walked toward another corner of the chamber, a section partly buried beneath collapsed concrete. Wade followed immediately. Boone began digging, not aggressively, just enough to uncover something hidden beneath debris. Dust filled the air. Small stones shifted. Then metal appeared. A second locker. Smaller, older, completely concealed until now. Wade's heartbeat accelerated. This one opened easier. Inside sat only 3 items. A photograph, a cassette tape, and a faded veterinary document. The veterinary document made no sense at first. It described treatment for an injured dog. Date, August 1981. Owner, Owen Keller. Wade stared. A dog? Donna leaned closer. What? Owen had a dog. Leonard looked surprised. The photograph confirmed it. A younger Owen stood beside a shepherd mix. Large ears, dark coat, intelligent eyes. The resemblance struck Wade instantly. Not identical, but close. Very close, almost eerily close. Then he noticed something written on the back. The dog's name. Ranger. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Donna whispered, "That's impossible." But it wasn't, because suddenly everything aligned. The family from 2011. Their dog named Ranger. The notebook. The scratching. The search. The station. The hidden records. Wade's mind raced. The family hadn't randomly discovered the mystery. They had inherited it somehow. And Boone somehow connected to it too. Then Leonard picked up the cassette tape. A handwritten label covered the front. One line. Recorded July 11th, 1981. For Ranger. Wade felt a chill move through his entire body. Because whatever remained hidden in this story, whatever connected Owen, the little boy, the first Ranger, the second Ranger, and Boone, the answer was almost certainly waiting on that tape. And for the first time since the scratching began, they were finally close enough to hear it. Wade didn't wait until morning. By sunset, he had already driven into Valentine and borrowed an old cassette player from a retired school teacher who still kept boxes of tapes in his garage. The machine looked ancient. Dust covered the speaker grill. One button was missing, but it worked. And 2 hours later, deep beneath the abandoned communication station, Wade carefully slid the cassette into place. Nobody spoke. Boone sat beside him. Leonard stood near the wall, Donna folded her arms tightly across her chest. The tape clicked. Static filled the room. A few seconds passed. Then a man's voice emerged. Tired, older than the photograph, but unmistakably Owen Keller. If you're listening to this, Ranger finally did his job. The room fell silent. Wade felt goosebumps rise along his arms. Static crackled. Then Owen continued. I don't know who found this. Maybe nobody. Maybe years have passed. A weak laugh followed. If Ranger brought you here, then at least one thing worked. The recording paused briefly. Then the story finally began. Not a conspiracy. Not a crime. A mistake. A terrible mistake. In January 1981, during a blizzard, an emergency signal came through the relay station. A rancher's wife suffered a severe allergic reaction. Medical help was requested, but because of repeated equipment failures, the transmission arrived hours late. By the time assistance reached the ranch, the woman was dead. Owen blamed himself, even though he wasn't personally responsible, even though he had documented the problems repeatedly, even though nobody listened. The guilt consumed him. Weeks later, legal disputes started. Families demanded answers. Lawyers became involved. Corporate managers denied responsibility. Records disappeared. Reports vanished. Nobody wanted blame attached to the relay system, especially not with lawsuits approaching. That was when Owen began secretly copying documents. Every report, every maintenance warning, every ignored request, everything. The evidence eventually filled several boxes. But he faced a problem. He no longer trusted anyone. Not his supervisors, not company lawyers, not local officials, nobody. So he hid the records, first inside the station. Then he created a backup, a second hiding place. The compartment behind the wall in room 7. The motel had once belonged partly to him. He knew about the hidden maintenance compartment. Nobody else did. The tape clicked again. Then Owen's voice softened. If something happens to me, Ranger knows where the copies are. Wade stared. Boone lifted his head. The old recording continued. I've spent 6 months teaching him. A small laugh. Probably sounds crazy. Another pause. But he's smarter than most people. Owen explained how he repeatedly trained Ranger using scent markers. Not tricks, not magic, simple scent association. The dog learned to locate the compartment, then the station, then the documents. Again and again, hundreds of repetitions. The tape revealed something else, something nobody expected. Owen never planned to disappear. He intended to expose everything publicly, but shortly before doing so, he received a terminal medical diagnosis. A rapidly progressing neurological disease. His health collapsed fast, very fast. Within months, he realized he wouldn't live long enough to finish what he started. So he created one final plan. He hid the evidence, recorded the tape, and left instructions for anyone who might someday find it. The recording ended with a final sentence, a sentence that explained almost everything. Ranger always scratches when he wants people to look closer. The tape clicked off. Silence filled the underground chamber. Donna spoke first, but that still doesn't explain Boone. Wade nodded slowly. Because she was right. The tape explained Ranger. The first Ranger, not Boone. Not the second Ranger from 2011, not the family, not the scratching at 214. The biggest question remained unanswered. Then Leonard picked up the veterinary document again. His eyes narrowed. Wait, everyone looked at him. What? He pointed toward the bottom corner. A handwritten note. Easy to miss. The note contained only one line. Puppy placed with Keller family relatives. Wade blinked. Keller family? Leonard nodded. The realization hit almost immediately. The dog in 2011 hadn't randomly shared the same name. That Ranger was descended from Owen's Ranger. The family staying in room 7 15 years ago were relatives. Somehow the story had been passed down, generation after generation, until eventually that little boy inherited the mystery, inherited the dog, inherited the search. Suddenly the journal made sense. Ranger scratched the wall. The father found the hidden compartment, the evidence, the records. the truth. Then the family left, not because they were afraid, because they had found what they came for. The mystery should have ended there, except it hadn't. One final piece remained. Boone. Wade looked down at his dog. The rescue dog stared back calmly. Then something occurred to him, a possibility so simple he almost laughed. The rescue shelter, the unknown history, the resemblance, the scars. Wade immediately called the shelter manager. The answer arrived 20 minutes later, and when it did, Wade simply sat down, speechless. Months before, Boone was found wandering near the cattle fence. A local ranch had surrendered several dogs after the owner died. Most records were incomplete, but one detail survived. The dogs belonged to the Keller family line. The same extended family connected to Owen, connected to Ranger, connected to the boy from room 7. Boone wasn't random. He wasn't magical. He wasn't solving a mystery. He had inherited generations of learned behavior. Dogs teach dogs. Older animals influence younger ones, especially within the same family environments. For decades, Ranger's behavior had been reinforced. Find the scent, scratch the location, lead people toward the truth. One generation passed it to the next, then another, until eventually Boone carried fragments of that training without anyone realizing it. Not perfectly, not consciously. Just enough to react to familiar scents hidden behind the wall. Enough to react to old markers lingering in forgotten places. Enough to continue a task started long before he was born. And the time? 2:14? That answer arrived from an entirely different source. Old maintenance logs showed the abandoned relay system automatically performed a nightly signal. Synchronization at 2:14 a.m. Even decades later, a backup battery system buried underground had continued sending a weak pulse through the disconnected line. The vibration Boone reacted to every night. The same vibration Ranger once reacted to. The same vibration that led generations of dogs back toward the hidden evidence. 45 years. A mystery spanning nearly half a century. Solved not by detectives, not by lawyers, not by officials, but by a rescue dog nobody wanted. Weeks later, local newspapers published the story. The recovered records finally reached the dead rancher's surviving relatives. Not enough to change the past, not enough to bring anyone back, but enough to provide answers, enough to provide truth. Sometimes that's all people really want. A month later, Wade stood outside the Prairie Lantern Motel, watching sunsets spill across the Nebraska prairie. The air felt different, lighter somehow. Boone rested beside it. The dog was older than Wade first thought. Gray hairs had begun appearing around his muzzle, yet he looked peaceful. For the first time since the scratching began, he slept through the night. No more 2:14 wake-ups. No more claw marks. No more restless pacing. The task was finished. Wade thought about Owen, about the rancher's family, about the little boy who had once stayed in room 7, about all the people connected by a story nearly lost to time. Then he looked at Boone. The rescue dog opened one eye briefly, as if checking whether Wade was still there. Wade smiled. 16 months earlier, he had arrived at the motel carrying a divorce, a broken routine, and a future he couldn't quite imagine. Now things felt different. Not because every problem was solved, because he finally felt connected to something again. Purpose, trust, companionship, the simple things that loneliness quietly steals. Boone stood and nudged Wade's hand, the same gesture he used every evening, the same gesture that always meant one thing. Time for a walk. Together they headed toward the open prairie. The sun settled low across the sandhills. Long shadows stretched through the grass. And for the first time in a very long while, neither of them was searching for anything. They were simply going home.